People are storming through the door. I can keep up. Turn that off. Awesome. Friday the 13th, 20, what is it? Friday the 13th. Do we still believe in that stuff?
Of course. How many cheap tattoos are out there right now?
Depending on how the day is going.
Yeah. Well, it's just starting here, so let me know if you're in another time zone, how it's going. What can I expect?
Sups up. John A. modular synth stuff in the background. That looks awesome.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's fun.
And do you make a lot of music with that stuff?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Happy to
anything
talk.
involving technology and creativity, I'm down for. I'd love to. Are you presenting today? Please say
No.
you are. Oh, jeez. Okay.
Do you have somewhere we can listen to that music? Or is it more like a private thing?
Yeah, and it's barely music. I'll but on Bandcamp, Zebra Secrets is the name of the band. And it was
Ooh.
kind of this project started out in the middle of like pre-vaccination COVID era. And my friend was a facilities manager for San Francisco Art Institute, which was empty. So it was this cavernous art school. And so we thought, well, we can set up and play together, but stay distanced. And so started recording it from there. But it's all like sort of processing the psychic turmoil of that era all the way to now.
All right, awesome.
The artwork is amazing. I'm looking at it on Bandcamp. Looks good. I'll hear it later. But so far it looks good.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is the type of this is what I listen to when I'm working. So this is awesome. Okay, good.
John, can you put the link in the chat?
Oh yeah,
I
we'll
missed
do.
the link. Yeah,
I'll
just share that out for sure.
Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack this whole thing before you even got it started, Julian.
That's
was the
The instigator. I'm the instigator.
in the best of ways. Yeah, so Office Hours Side Project Edition. We've got there are two shares, and I missed a couple people had signed up, but I was just distracted yesterday. So I sent a note to some of those folks who might show up to take up the third slot. But to start, let's see, we've got Sandro, and I already forgot the second person presenting. Who was it? Are they here? I might have to look in my notes. I need to get better at keeping track of this. I need a clipboard or something. But in any case, Sandro is presenting, right?
Yep.
Okay, so without further ado,
I just want to say,
Sandra?
Dre, this is being transcribed already, and I kind of uncomfortable with this being sent to a third-party extension. So if you could turn that off, that would be great.
Julian, you're gonna have to stop your recording too then.
No, Julian
No?
and transcribing this is great, but I don't want it external.
Yeah, hang on a second. Give me a second.
So I'm sure you can get the transcript and video from Julian.
Give me 2 seconds. All right, transcript is turned off.
All right, cool. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm going to do a talk. Hold on, let me set up a timer. So I got 10 minutes, right, Julian?
Yeah, like a tight 10, and then we discuss for. Oh, sorry, Rodney is the second one. Good, Rodney's there. Okay, I remember that. So yeah, like a tight 10. Like imagine you're on the stage at
Yeah.
at the Improv Club.
Yeah, 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to start now. I'm going to share my screen and start it up. I'm going to talk, I'm going to go through a deck. I'm going to talk about the ideas that are motivating what I'm working on. I'll probably take up to 10 with the deck, But if you guys want to actually see some of the implementation, you know, we can leave it in the QA session, or I can reach out to you individually or personally. Okay, so I'm just going to share the entire screen. I think that should do it. Yeah, you see that?
Yep,
Everyone's
loud
good.
and
Everyone
clear.
sees it. All right, let me start my timer. All right. Great. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to be talking about composable documents today. So this is something that Julian did. You've probably all seen it. I think it's called Ghostwriter now. But it played off the idea of, and you know, I hope to put words in Julian's mouth, but the idea of how does AI come into our creativity or into our lives, et cetera. I believe you put it that this is sort of like jazz, where you kind of play off each other and so on, and it's pretty clear what's going on as you essentially allow your writing partner to work with you. I'll leave Julian to fully describe it, but I think the idea gets across. And I was really inspired by this idea. I love the idea of conjuring. And so, of course, I've been thinking about these things for a long time, and so I immediately like rebuilt this myself and kind of did some stuff. But I simultaneously, there was this website that came out called The Way of Code. Has everyone seen that? I expect that many of you have. If you haven't, just look up The Way of Code. And this is the gist of it. It's very clever navigation system on this left side with the numbers, or the number of kind of pages, as it were, but also that reflects what a developer, a code writer would see in their code writing environment, which is the line numbers. And here, of course, they're being used for navigation, and this is number 44, and you see this these are animated, so they're beautiful programmatic generated visuals. And it's based on the Sun Tzu's Art of War, and loosely based, directly based. I don't know how this was made, but it's Rick Rubin's take on ancient wisdom, mainly around vibe coding, which seems to be the inspiration here. And so there are things like these, right? You can see you get the Sun Tzu and you get the vibe coder right at the end. All right, hold on, let's get this screen. Oh, annoying. Okay, and you know, there's a couple more, and there's 57 or so of them, and they're fun to read, but it's really the part on the left that I'm really focusing on. First of all, these beautiful kind of generated visuals. When you go there, you'll see that they're animated and so on. But it reminds me of kind of clubs in the 90s where people would have generated visuals, and this is actual scene that still exists. Few more of them, and you see by the things on the left, there's these prompts, right? Make it softer, and then you can modify, and then there's more to it. So as we go through this, attempting to control the future is like standing in for the master carpenter. When you handle the master's tools, you will surely cut your fingers. Found that interesting in the context of vibe coding. And this experiment is purely geometric, and I'm going to kind of dwell on this for a little bit. If you click in the interface on the left, you see that kind of show the code kind of button, and it shows the code that is generating this thing. And so this idea now starts to dovetail with this notion of composable documents, documents that live, documents that are generating their content, which, again, carries forward in my mind from what Julian was working on, and of course, other work I've been doing. So I went into this, and I kind of walked through it, and I'd like to do that with you now. And you jump in, you go to the modify button, which I'll eventually find, and this is going to Claude, and it allows you to change the proportions, and so it's going to rebuild the code that that generated the visual, and so that it has a context, that has a coding context. And I'll jump ahead, and then it starts writing a new thing that changes the proportions, right? Calling it elongated proportions. And we'll jump ahead a little bit, and cool, and that's what it generated right there, right? So it kind of spaced things apart, and that sort of thing. And here it's interesting to me just pause it, how it describes what it did. And it created a remix, it did all these things, wheel, vessel, room spacing, some ideas. At the end, it says the result emphasizes vertical elongation and creates a more dramatic interplay between compressed width and etc. You can read this, transforming in meditative quality to original. Now, I think that's the stretching it, right? No pun intended, right? Like it spaced things apart a little bit. It kind of changed like a couple of settings. It has a kind of poetic way of describing what it did, but very cool, right? So this idea of embedding a dynamic element into a page that generates the content, let's say every single time you look at it. That's not what the way of code does, but it's a natural next step. And that now dovetails into a lot of the stuff I'm working on, which is creating composable documents that generate the content based on the immediate context of their rendering. So when you looking at the page changes it, sort of like in physics in a way, I suppose. So that's what I'm getting to, but I'd like to go a little bit further. So I'm going to talk about maybe one of the most consequential talks in software and user interface design ever made, and done in 2012. And if you haven't seen it, I'll have links to the back, but I'll actually go through a little bit of this. And 4 minutes. Okay, so called Inventing on Principle by Brett Victor, who was an Apple engineer, did UI for Apple, general genius. And this is how he introduces the talk. And again, I'm not going to read this to you. I do have limited time, but finding a guiding principle for your work is something that's important to him. And that's why it's called Inventing on Principle. So there's principles to inventing software. So you can read this deck later, but ideas are very important to me. And in particular, what sorts of tools create a healthy environment for ideas are part of his principle, right? This idea that great ideas in the form of great art stories, inventions, scientific theories, these things take on a life of their own, which give meaning to our lives as people. So it's a principled approach to this notion of creating software. So this is the video. And again, it's a long video and you should watch it yourself and watch it in its entirety. Again, it's the most important video I think ever made, at least in the last 20, 30 years on this stuff. But I'll jump ahead. And this is the general idea. You have and now you may have seen these sorts of interfaces and so on, but in 2012, this was like, Einstein showing up and telling us relativity. And now this is hugely inspirational to the Apple programming environment, the Swift programming, but it all comes from this talk. And the idea is simple. You change the code and you see the results of the code changes. You have a direct interaction with the code and the output. And so as you play with this, right, you see the results and it goes back and forth. So you can start on the left and move things around on the image and it changes the values on the right. He goes on through various variations on this kind of very nice interactive situation. And then he moves on to this building a game with these tools. And, it's a Mario type game. He goes forward. I'm going to jump ahead to a little part. And he's now planning how to jump. What happens when I jump? What settings? So he wants to see changes immediately of what changes in the code will do to the output. So let me jump forward ahead. And he should talks about it. If he's talking about if there's a process and you want to map time to space, he wanted to create this kind of onion skinning effect, right? And he's going to demonstrate it now, where he shows that the visualization is of what would happen. And you can see where he's been. But what's interesting, you can rewind and then watch what would happen in the future. So you can, hold on, I'm trying to jump ahead, but I'm missing the kind of the little part here. Hopefully it's around here. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, right. Okay, so here we go. You can change this future. So you can change the code and see what would happen. So this is an incredibly powerful way to program. And I'm just going to pause it there because, again, you can watch the video yourself. So this is another way of looking at what people call vibe coding, right? Where you're getting this immediate feedback, this idea that you can play with code and immerse yourself in it and be part of it. So he concludes with this idea of working in a text editor blindly without an immediate connection to this thing, which is what I'm actually trying to make. I feel this goes against this principle, the principle he's discussing. I have that creators need an immediate connection to what they're making. Okay, that's my time. So I tried to come up with a coding environment I thought might be more in line with that. And that's what he did. So vibe coding is a poor substitute for live coding. I think Victor's vision is a much more effective way to think about things. Now, this isn't a disparagement of vibe coding. I think vibe coding is fantastic. I've dedicated my entire life to automating all kinds of tools so that the average person could get into coding and not so much learn to code, but actually use technology to better their lives. And I love vibe coding, but it encourages a distance from what you're doing. It encourages an independence from the code. And I think that's a mistake, right? It's simply a psychological mistake. And I don't think it will actually fly. And Karpathy never intended it for it to fly as it has. But of course, marketing and a bunch of grifters have taken this up as being some sort of reason to get, contracts of companies because they're vibe coders or something like that. And it's really kind of a giant grift because it's nonsense. And the way forward is to how do we blend the AI into our experience? So I'm going to leave some notes here. I suppose I'll have this deck available at some point. I talked about AI about 8 years ago in chatbots. So AI has been around a very long time, and so have AI models and so on and so forth. So I think we would be good to go back a little bit and not forget Dre. Not this Dre. Don't forget this Dre either. But don't forget about Dre, because this has been going on for a very long time. Vibe coding isn't new. The idea of making it easy for people to code isn't new. Interactive environments aren't new. Using models to write your code isn't new. And okay, lost my. Okay, 1 second. Lost my mouse. And so I think it's a great time for us to rethink and think think harder, imagine harder about what we're doing. And I'll stop share. And that's it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so open discussion. Thoughts, reflections.
This is not new to me because Sandra and I have known each other for a long time, and so I was always aware of this this trajectory. But it was nice to see an example, like some of the thinking of where it's coming from, or some of the things that are currently inspiring what's going on, and just the thought of you're talking about these are tools to help make coding.
Well, by the way, I can demonstrate some of these tools if
yeah. You know what? You should share your screen and just demo jam while questions are being asked, and then you can freestyle stuff. But we talked about Sandra, you've got your infinite
permanent draft.
That kind of exists in this world of what you're talking about, right? Because it's kind of like,
yeah, that's my particular contribution.
Yeah. So the idea of it's almost like, what about your thoughts on the idea of like software for an audience of one that is used once?
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
So I think one-off coding is fantastic. I think disposable coding is great. I don't want anything I've said to distract from the great value of being able to just kind of say something and have the code written. And I'll demonstrate that for you now. So I'm loading a Whisper model into my browser. This is all running locally. So now I have voice to text transcription. So this is sort of one of the things that is available to you now, that if you want to do voice-driven interfaces, which I think if you listen to anybody that's at the cutting edge, such as Andrew or whatever, voice-driven interfaces is really where a lot of the next generation of software will go. So here this is also keyboard controllable, and I'm going to say, look, I want you to make me an HTML page with 2 columns, okay? And then it's read, me, and then it does that, right? So this is a little interface I've made to kind of, you've seen something like this on GPT. I'm going somewhere else with this, but all I want to demonstrate is that I can now build interfaces where the code is being written by just asking for it with my voice. Okay, so that's kind of interesting, and I can also prompt and I can do more. But this is nice, right? So I can just sit here and just kind of jam. Now, remember what we saw with the way of code. I have this code block. Very easy for me to then just make a little button that renders this, right? So already you have something kind of more interesting, right? You're starting to talk, you see this codex, but then you're not interested in that. You just want to see what it produces. And so this kind of one-off thing, Dre, can be done here, right? And then you say, oh, great, that's what I wanted. Great. And then, copy, paste. I could, I've built an automatic deployment system, so I could just press a button and have it go live on the web, like Manus does, or all these other kind of companies. And this idea of talking about something, having it manifest, and then broadcasting it to the world, that's incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful. And it's incredibly powerful for the kind of wisdom of the crowds, the democratization of technology, and also the power to the people that local models is, again, a whisper model, right? This is what people pay for, but you can run it locally. Running modern tools, modern LLMs and so on locally. Okay, so that's that. So just keep that in mind. This is more for my internal stuff. But the other thing I want to show is more this composable document idea, right? And it's not exactly permanent draft, which it's related, Dre, but like I'll show that some other talk, I guess. But here, this is really like I'll start with the original inspiration for this. So this is an editor, not unlike Julian's, that you can write in, and it has this terminal TUI kind of notion right in. And then I can turn on a generated personality. And currently, because I'm working a lot with Marshall McLuhan, I have Marshall McLuhan's personality, and he's completing the sentence, as we saw earlier with Julian's product. I'm going to have many personalities, so you'll be able to. I think you think in Ghostwriter, you have many personalities as well, Julian. This idea of just contextualizing, right? Bringing in the ambience of an AI, bringing in your writing partner, your jazz partner, your groove partner, right? And I added this little thing where you have multiple options, and so you can kind of select from 3, right? And you complete it, and et cetera, et cetera. Bob's your uncle, as they say in Canada. But the other thing is, it has this is actually an editor, so you can cut, right, and paste. Let me turn off the generation. Hold on. So you can cut and paste. What did I cut? Hold on. You can cut, right, and then you kind of move the cursor just like you might in Vim, right, and then you can paste, right, and paste, and then you have undo and redo, and you can wipe your screen and then bring it back. But then you can also do things like insert, and this is getting to the point. You saw the code generation environment. Well, what if those things I produce could be inserted into documents, into this? You can imagine you go to a website, now you have a cursor, and you can move around and change the text and insert things into it and pull things from it. So I'm going to insert an image. And this is actually a web component. Cool. And I can insert a bunch of images, and I can undo that, and I can redo that. Right. And this is now, saved, so I can reload and come back to my interface. And then I can start, like, say, a model, right? A 3-dimensional model. And I can insert a web component that does that. Or I can insert like a form, so if people want to log in. So you can see very, very easily that this starts to become a generated web page if you want to look at it. But really, it's a flow with interactive elements that can be built for users and that run, and this is the point, that run individually. So if I insert an LLM stream, right? And so it's going to insert an LLM. So you saw this already. All right, cool. Cool. And I write some more text, and I keep going, and I insert another image, and so on, and blah, blah, blah. But, when I reload, let me just erase these just for visuals. Then when I reload, what do you think is going to happen? Right? Well, my model is going to run again, and it's going to generate the code again. Right? I mean, that wasn't easy to see. Whoop. Let me just jump to the end. There's a little bit of glitch here. Sorry about that. But if I reload, right, you'll see that it's regenerating. So it's running the prompt again, essentially is what I'm getting at. So right now it's running the prompt and showing you the underlying code, right? The code behind, as Microsoft might say it, the, you know, the, whatever they call it in other, in Stranger Things, right? This is the alternate reality, the sort of underneath our viewed reality. But it's very easy for me to now, if this creates, I say to it, I want you to create a, for the user, read their age, read their location, read the language, their preferred language, read all these marketing data, whatever you want to do. And I want you to generate an interface for them that helps them interact with some idea I want to convey, be it an article, be an interactive game, be it a lesson plan, be it, you know, some code, and have that generate on the fly as you look at it. And so this is the notion of permanent draft, where what you're creating are signals and symbols and triggers, right? You're not creating a static page. You're creating an opportunity, right, for the generation of something new that matters to you in the moment, right? And so this is essentially where I'm going with this. And
Should we just-
and that's
Sorry,
it.
Sandra, should we just see if there are any, just
Yeah, that's
to
it.
help,
I'm
to help
actually done.
you, to help you, like any kind of remarks or,
No.
okay, thanks for that.
I might have one. This is, first off, this is super cool. And I've been doing a lot of research around human AI co-creativity in general. And I think there's a really interesting, I guess, flow of interaction between the human and the AI here. And I like the approach around it's built bespoke for them every time they view the page, and it changes, and it's kind of this variable thing always. I'd be interested to hear how, like, as this has developed over time, how have you built the parameters around how do I word this? Like, AI a lot of the time, I guess, regresses towards the average. And while there's generative variability, there's a lot of really there are a lot of like similar patterns that will emerge based on like the same prompts you use, depending on like the temperature and all these other like things you use to set what it needs to generate. And I don't know if you have particular goals for this, but is the goal to create these kind of consistent experiences with variable, I guess, artifacts that people experience, or is this meant for like an exploratory experience in total?
This is meant for the next generation of kind of enterprise software around A/B testing, and that's what I'm going for as a product. But in that process, I want this to be for creatives, again, inspired by Julian's work. I want this to be a way for you to be delighted by your own prompts and your own accidents. And I want you to come back to something you conjured, right? You said you have this little magic book that you say these phrases called a prompt, but it's just a magic incantation, and it produces something, right? That's going to be similar to your point, but will differ. I want there to be variation, but within parameters. Of course, you control that with temperature and top P and top K. And then even with the prompting, of course, you give it context, you give it rules. There's nothing to stop you from saying, you know, you always want to have these colors, you always want it to be this wide, whatever you want to say. But I do want the serendipity of randomness, really to not be hidden. That is what a model produces or operates against, is in a sense randomness, and you can control how random how far into the random you want to go, and you can leave those gates full open for massive randomness, or you can change it. And then, you know, those are sliders again on the model itself, but also parameters. So that's how I control it. And I also built underneath this, and I've showed this before, which I call Fisk, which is a kind of very advanced local run. Again, I believe in local models. Call it a RAG pipeline, but it ingests, extracts entities, extracts information from all of your documents. So I feed it my bookmarks file, and it learns about me and how I make things and how I like to write and how I like to do things. And eventually I'm going to build a talk to Sandro kind of bot that you can pay for access to the body of my entire career. But ultimately, it's just a way for you to get really, really good context for your prompting. So that's another way that I control it.
Interesting.
With context.
I've experimented with a few like smaller versions of like a kind of similar concept, like an AI chatbot that redesigns itself based on how you talk with it. But this is like,
I love that.
It's like a very like, I love the kind of pulling context from so many different directions perspective.
Yeah, like I mean,
Randall has a question.
we can make errors now and recover from them more quickly, and that's a really powerful thing. Sorry, Brandon, go ahead.
This is cool to see. One of the things that I have observed, and like there's fellows about kind of creativity tools, um, is that they can be pretty paralyzing for folks if they don't have some sense of the frame of reference and what things are really sort of practical handles and what are not. That's something that I really like. There was a guy, he's still alive, and he still does stuff, but Zay Frank was really popular and prolific
Zay Frank,
online
yeah.
many, many decades ago now. Um, and one of the things that
I'm old enough to remember, yeah.
right. And one of the things that he talked about was just how the terror of a blank piece of paper for most people, a lot of people who have kind of committed to this repertoire of actions is relatively well versed in like dispelling the sort of the terror field of a blank piece of paper, but it takes a little bit to getting used to that. It seemed like so one of the challenges I have with Victor's work is that like there's not really any exposure of what you can do because the presumption is you can do everything, but that's like actually quite scary for a lot of folks. Have you got a sense of how you can kind of elevate what are the sort of most meaningful and useful or sort of provocative handles that people can kind of conjure? Like obviously it's all a soft interface, people can move stuff around, but like presumably there are things that are kind of more generative than others that people can kind of play with. Are there ways in which you can kind of demonstrate that to folks so that they can sort of understand and sort of get the measure of something a little bit more easily than, um, you know, touching something and realizing, oh, you shouldn't touch that.
So the terror of the blank page, I think Julian is addressing that in his work, and then kind of extending it. Okay, so now I start adding other kind of more, I don't know, what do you call them, more active kind of elements. And I think the answer to your question is that comes from the way I think about software now is that you can go in many directions and come back. The risk of failure is very low. The risk of getting lost is very low. And so the learning is very high and modeling is very high in terms of abilities and opportunity. It was very hard 10 years ago to actively model somebody through time and really make intelligent conclusions from their past history. I think now we can make very good conclusions from people's history. And I think that's partly the answer to your question is that we can actually learn through trial and error it's training, right? Billions and billions of iterations, what people like, what people don't, what people do and what they don't, and what works and what doesn't. Again, I'm going for an A/B testing framework. So I want to actually refine the ability to give people what they want. The elusive perfect interface is what I want to get to, where someone shows up at a website and it's exactly what they want, right? That's impossible so far, but fewest clicks to get there, UI design, Jacob Nielsen, throw it all in there. All of that is being flattened. And maybe we'll get to a place where they show up, and just because based on what I know about you, I'm not going to serve you ads. I'm going to give you what you want, right? And so, so to your question, I think that's how I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking we have some new powers for aligning people to what they actually need and want. And the terrorism of a company deciding how you should work is in UI is going to lessen.
I have a quick question. Thanks for sharing, Sandro.
Thank you.
So when you showed like the slide where it's like the spectrum of like vibe coding and live coding on like kind of bookending the slide, it made me think about in my 20s when I had found a really good transliteration of the Tao Te Ching. And it was interesting, the way it was formatted was you had the Chinese on the right-hand side of the page. Then in the middle, you had like some sort of direct translation of the Chinese words and phrases. But then on the left were common scholars and authors, their interpretation of what was said.
So the kind of hermeneutics of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so you had it all in one kind of format, and it made me think, have you thought about, because you talked about the distance and the blending of vibe coding and live coding, have you thought about if there was a way where you could see not only the immediate effect of what you're coding, but maybe like a misinterpretation, like a slight hallucination or other interpretations, as opposed to, okay, here are the errors, but what are the consequences of the errors? That might be the happy accident that I want to see real time.
I think that's wonderful, and we see it now, right? With reasoning models, you see it's thinking, and if you actually read these things as they're running, you'll see that it backtracks, makes mistakes. I think I'm going to try this, and then the next one is like, oh no, I'm going to try this. Oh wait, that wasn't a good idea, and that is attractive to people. I think it's really it's not even useful in terms of understanding what it produces, though it is, if you kind of know what it's talking about. But it's wonderful for people to see that feedback, to see a thinking process. It makes it feel more human. I'm going to take your idea and see what I can do with it. Obviously, I can read. So technically, certain interfaces to models, if it's a reasoning model, the response will contain reasoning. So this is one of the properties of the response, and I can actually just pull that and show it. So that would be the easiest. But what about with normal inference models that aren't reasoning models? They don't have that step. More interesting to your idea would be what would I kind of come up with a way to kind of find the diff between two things, or the common ground, or the common mistakes, or the trodden ground between them. And I think that's fascinating. The glyphs and the runes and the kind of palimpsest of that underlies all this stuff is really what I love, right? Like these two dimensions that are being merged and flipped between. That's a great inspirational notion, and thank you.
Yeah.
I'll let you know if I come up with something like that. Yeah, sure. Reach out. By the way, Brandel, are you on one of those? You're a VR. You're an entity, right?
This is how I live these days. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Love it.
No, this is
Randall's
the
in Vision Pro. I like the glasses. It's nice tortoiseshell.
yeah. They're a little bigger, but they work well. No, I've been rocking this internally for the last couple months, and it was really nice to be allowed to finally show my face in public, so to speak.
The microphone on it makes it sound like you have a stuffy nose.
Yeah, like a
Oh.
little head cold. But maybe he does.
I mean I do a little bit actually, but yeah, I don't know. I might I'll check whether I'm on my headphones, my normal headphones or what. But thanks for letting me know.
This is great, Sandro. Really appreciate you sharing it, and I'm digging the kind of Sandro and I have a little, of course, like everyone, we have a little DM. So being able to see the evolution of his thinking and creating stuff, and I really have to credit you, Sandro, for kind of early days. I don't know, it's probably just like a few months ago, but just kind of clarifying some of it was just great to have someone close by to say, so A, what's going on? How does this work? And then getting enough of a perspective on. I think remember there's one thing. It's like it was very kind of like beatnik. I imagine you saying. I mean, you were typing it, but you're kind of like, it's all about the rag, man. It's all about the rag.
Yeah, ragtime. And this kind of beautifully kind of circles back to Dre's original question, and like, so the inspiration from you and the inspiration from this group of people in NFL, and I'm so glad to see all these members kind of coming, is what what I'm getting from this group anyway. And as more people, to Dre's point, can kind of make things, right? Visualize code, software, other things, of course. Tangible objects probably more in line with design fiction, but even with software, if more people can contribute to the conversation, it's all going to be a good thing, because we just bang off each other or bounce off each other. Yeah.
Which makes me think, I mean, I always get like very excited in these calls, and I don't know where it necessarily goes, but I'll just say out loud, like it would be, is there value in having a kind of like accessible one-stop shop kind of hub for this kind of collaborative collective thinking? I'm by hub, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what I mean, but if there were a place, and I just think because there's this URL I've been sitting on where I've been thinking about putting stuff on, which is smartasapuppy.com. Because I
love it.
It was sort of like Matt Jones's phrase from fucking 15 years ago. And I think he wrote maybe a short blog post or essay, like this stuff doesn't need to be any smarter than a puppy. What I think was what I took away from it. So I just started wondering, like, if that's his website, maybe it even positioned itself as like, oh, this is like a real kind of operation. And we make stuff that is just smart enough. It's not about world domination. It's about making us, I don't know. I don't know what the tag phrase is. But what I started thinking about are like, are there ways in which we can kind of like, collectively share our work and amplify it by working in collaboration more directly, by just sort of saying like, hey, here's a bunch of stuff that speaks to a kind of common vision or set of ideas that we're kind of loosely connected. Again, back to my like, if there was a festival of this, like, Sandra would be on the stage from 6:30 to 8, and then another group would come on, and just has this more of a kind of collaborative, collective carnival festival vibe to it, except it's on a website until
Yeah.
the day in which we actually do have a festival.
That would be a lot of fun. I mean, we could even make a TUI interface that you navigate a file system, and it's just folders, like just a dump, basically. Almost like, what's that thing called, Dre, where people just dump the file pile and so on. Like it's just,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
notion.
File
It's
pile.
just like whatever's pop the stack, push the stack, like, you know what I mean? Like just kind of move through whatever. You see
Yeah.
everything, you don't see everything, doesn't matter, right? Like you just get in where you fit in and have a lot of fun at it. And anyone can contribute, kind of thing, or with some guardrails. Because most of what people produce now, and this is actually like indicative of why we don't need a lot of frameworks anymore, because AIs don't have problems with complexity like humans do, and so we don't need to give them guidelines on how to do complexity. They can just make HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I'm speaking of web pages, and we do other things, of course, and that can just be run. You know what I mean? Just very easily. So yeah, we can just make a GitHub and reflect it onto a web page or something. Anyway, I don't want to go
Yeah,
that
like
way.
if you push to the hub, then it kind of adds to the TUI stack. I love the idea of doing a TUI
That's
thing
right.
because it's so like
Yeah.
counterintuitive.
Next.
Cool.
It's almost like the web ring thing, almost. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. Appreciate you
Thank you.
taking the time and sharing. I know that could be takes a lot to just put your work out there. So I appreciate that. Rodney is up
Yes,
next.
sir. Yeah, let me share my screen. Everybody see my screen? Okay, so I'll talk about the inspiration. So when I worked at JP Morgan, I was a VP product design lead on the investment banking side many years ago. I was hired to help a product team create like this ecosystem. Wasn't a platform, wasn't really a bunch of products. They had some weird, fuzzy conceptual idea for an ecosystem. So my manager had said to me, and he said, my first warning to you, do not design or create anything that's already been built. So he said, you'll fail. So I said, okay. So he said, you need to understand all the systems in play and all those that are no longer in play. So he handed me like a huge PowerPoint deck of all the systems. And I had to like study it and really understand like what was in play, what wasn't. But there was one slide that was fascinating I'd never seen before. It looked like a subway map, and it was all the systems that were being sunsetted. And it showed like these visual paths. Some systems were being decommissioned, some were being decommissioned but cannibalized into other systems, and what features were going where. And it was like this huge, like orchestrated effort to do this. So that popped in my head years ago when I was thinking about how Midjourney kept updating its versioning and how it became more and more realistic. And I was like, man, I kind of missed the older versions. It wasn't as realistic and so forth. So I found some images, and this is one of them that I did with kind of the lower versions. So the idea popped in my head, which I'll go here. And I said, this whole idea of versioning and termination, like, what about prototypes of like cyborgs? Like the very first versions? And what if the human aspect of them like kind of felt what decommission was, but because they're faulty, like they just don't get it? So I'm like, so what if they kind of freak out and the only thing they know to do is call 911? So essentially what I created was like these 911 logs of the conversations. So the way to get to this was I kind of experimented with ChatGPT. I built or I created a little thing where I wanted ChatGPT to understand that there were different use cases. Each use case should have a different percentage of machine and humanity within each cyborg. And I want that split to showcase in how these cyborgs communicate between English and machine code. And of course, I had to edit it or so forth. My coding days stopped at Cold Fusion, so I don't know how to code machine code. So what happened was I played the role of the operator, and the AI played the role of the cyborg. So to test it out, I created this thing while I'm driving in my car and played the ChatGPT through my car for voice. So I'm driving in my car, and the ChatGPT was like mimicking dialing to me as the operator. And I'm saying like, yes, 911, can I help you? And it's speaking in my car, 001, termination. Like, I was like, okay, either I'm onto something or I'm just fucking crazy right now. Like I'm talking to this AI like real time. So I won't go through all these, but I can provide this to anyone afterward. But just to give you a sense, so I came up with this idea of this archive extraction, these dispatch logs, and there were these unauthorized communications. I tried to come up with like, okay, how do I identify kind of each kind of cyborg? Like what would be some of the metadata, entity type, facility, experiment sequence number, all these type of things, which was kind of fun to kind of think through these. So the first, and again, I won't read all this, but I'll explain the use case. So here, I'll kind of zoom in. You can see moving from left to right, there's a call operator. What's your emergency alert signal? I process threat, sensation unfamiliar, term decommissioned, question mark. Data seek, definition, protocol, survival engaged. So in this first one, the operator is just kind of just talking as if just totally oblivious to the way this cyborg is communicating, right? And at the end, the disconnection ends. And sometimes these cyborgs are actually fading or being terminated, like on the spot. So that was the first one, like pretty basic. So then I thought about some other ones. So here, the operator is assuming that the caller is a kid doing a prank call with some sort of voice modulator. So the operator is saying things like, you know, is this another one of those pranks? It's not funny. Let's pretend I believe you for a second. What exactly is happening at lab 42B? So there's all these like things. And again, you'll see the degree of humanity varies in these things. So sometimes they don't really understand what they're feeling and how to articulate that. But they know something is ending and they're freaking out. So the next use case, they call the operator and they're put on hold. And the cyborg is essentially freaking out because all they hear is music playing in the background. So you could see here things like loop detected, silence equals solace, speak, continuity threatened, data depletion, existence wane, respond, null pointer, the whole music continues. And then at the end, you know, the entity is like pretty much being eliminated, and then the operator says, hello, this is 911, how can I help you? And that's how it ends. So the next one, let's see, sorry, just trying to adjust the screen here. They call 311 in error. So I don't know if everybody's familiar with 311. That's for like emergencies, for like, I think like some first responder stuff. It's not cops. You're not calling cops for that type of stuff. So the operator is an AI. So now it's like two AIs talking. But the cyborg is trying to communicate to the AI that it has some humanity, but the 311 AI doesn't really understand what that means. And it keeps emphasizing, like, we assist with non-emergency city services. Can you specify your request? And then towards the end, the entity is being shut down. So again, I won't go into it, but it's an interesting read what happens. Next one, it's a 911 AI operator. Again, another interesting conversation between the two AIs, what's happening there. Trying to understand about organics, how they fear termination due to instinctual self-preservation. But the 911 understands that it's AI, so it doesn't have to deal with that. Its function is totally different. And last one, I believe is the last one, they accidentally dial a fax machine. So they just get a series of beeps and they're trying to figure out like what these beeps mean. And you could see the kind of the AI like interpret feedback loop, like, are you sentient? Like experience similar existence fractile and like, but there's just these beeps and silence. So it doesn't know how to respond to that. So then at the end of this, I just kind of offered some reflection points, and just kind of overview of kind of what inspired that and so forth. So one of the reasons, too, that I wanted to share, just as a couple of slides I put together for here. For those of you who don't know me, kind of created this reflexive practice called Somatic Futures. So what I'm interested in is the relational dance between what happens in the body as physical lived experience, but also as social construction, and how that impacts future possibilities that we imagine, engage in, and vice versa. Have those possibilities impact our layers of identity and meaning, but also sensation-wise, emotionally-wise, thoughts and so forth. There's a recursive loop there to me that I'm interested in. So without going all into somatic futures, how it works and everything else right now, there are three things, or three, let's call them pathways of creating for somatic futures. So one, you could explore speculative bodies, ways of being, new ways of interaction, ways of behavior, communication, and so forth. And also the worlds at the different scales, and like the ecosystems that impact embodiment, deep structures, processes, and so forth. So one thing about somatic futures, it's all movement based, it's bottom up. So this is not about creating a world and sticking bodies in them, it's revealing the world through bodies, through actual movement and so forth. So for this, some ideas I thought now about extending this, because when I did Gossamer Leap several years ago and just had it sit on the shelf, I hadn't really formulated my somatic futures perspective. I didn't have a method yet. So now looking back, I was like, all right, how could I extend this if I just wanted to focus on the cyborgs? So one idea for a project, Patch Notes Archive, thought about, what about those cyborgs that were versioned out, but they weren't fully erased? And how, as a kind of speculative future workshop or something, how can we embody corrupted update loops, memory leaks, or overwritten protocols? Really imagine these speculative entities that haunt kind of like the margins of the system logic. Creatively, it could be illustrated patch note manifestos written from the point of view of these failed cyborgs. Could be AI generated portraits with artifacts with partial decommissioned, spoken word fragments layered with like kind of the synthetic audio distortion. It's one idea. Another idea, ways of being, protocol drift, kind of explore like what rituals and behaviors do these cyborgs kind of like, how do they glitch? How do they move? How do they interact with each other? So how do these change over time when kind of that original coding intent is kind of like forgotten? How do they kind of parse kind of outdated directives? So motion design video, gestures slowly mutating across different environments, a commandment scroll of body rituals with unreadable instructions, an embroidered movement diagram that charts deviation from original function. And lastly, what about the world itself? I mean, if you once you read these, you know they're in a lab somewhere. You know, as one described, the walls seem to flicker with my memories, like there's something going on, but we only get like a hint. We get little fragments of this so-called world. Idea for a project, Echo States. How can we flesh out using movement first, using dissonance in movement as a way to kind of reveal what needs to be true in this world, to acknowledge and make these type of movements meaningful of these cyborgs? What is the belief about these bodies in motion? And what happens when these cyborgs kind of leave residue? There's traces, whispers, glitches, shimmers, creative outputs, architectural sketches of like half-remembered buildings from the point of view of the cyborgs. A world atlas made from kind of archival echoes, sound, smell, broken links. Like that becomes the legend. Or a wearable device that leaks fragments of kind of forgotten directives, kind of echoes in the background of what was and so forth. So that's my madness, and I'll stop there.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Rodney.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Anybody. Yeah, feel free to hop in.
I really love this as like an anthropological view into a built world. This is like such a cool way of exploring something created in this way. And really like empathizing with the leftover, especially the last section. I feel like I really connected with on like empathizing with the leftover like remnants of this like culture.
Yeah.
This is a really cool like fictional like mental exercise.
Yeah, thank you, man. Connect with me afterward, man. I'm
Yeah.
thinking about doing a workshop around this for folks so we can actually play with this.
That would be
awesome.
I too found it super interesting and also fun. And while you were talking, I was thinking like, what if this like happened not so far in the future, or maybe like with the IoT from nowadays? I don't know. Imagine, for example, intelligent surveillance cameras start to I don't know. I don't have anything else to survey, or I don't have anything else to secure, so I'm starting to get bored. What can I do? And I don't know, just like they start to become, without being cyborgs, but more about like the intelligence we're giving to certain appliances. I don't know. I loved it. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Yeah, it's fascinating.
I have a question, if you don't, because you introduced the larger project as something about experiencing things bottom up, from like as a body emerging into a world.
Yes.
And I wonder, when you're thinking about how this comes into being, are people going to live some of these experiences that you're describing, or, embody them somehow, or?
Yeah, so the way earlier in this May, I did my first official Somatic Futures workshop at Houston Foresight's Spring Gathering 50th anniversary in Houston with a bunch of futurists. And so I'll give you a taste of it. So one of the things we did, there were scenarios created in other workshops. So we borrowed those scenarios, collapse, transformation, baseline, all these things. So one of my points is that too often in future scenarios, the altitude when it comes to people is high, right? And overall, that could be useful if you're thinking about kind of generalizations and so forth, but it collapses nuance. And some of those nuance actually spark and generate new worlds, so to speak, right? So what we did was we looked at these scenarios and said, okay, let's try and identify some of the common gestures and movements some of these people may be doing on a daily basis, just high level, what we think. And now it's like, okay, because it's a future, let's speculate what types of movements and gestures they might be doing that are kind of unfamiliar to us. So we used one about immigrants in the future as migrant workers, but the migrants weren't wanted in this kind of future or whatever, just their work. So one of the speculative movements came up with was someone who actually covers their mouth when speaking to authority. So as a gesture of like not looking to offend or disrupt, or someone walking and actually shrinking their movement so as not to take up too much space. So in the workshop, folks actually moved somatically very slowly in these ways, noticing and jotting down what was evoked. And then me prompting them, take a look at what came up for you. Whose future memory is this? And they write that as a fragment. And then we transform the movements into concepts and kind of reveal the deeper worldings and so forth. But yeah, it's actually not just about sitting there writing on post-its with me. We get to move a bit.
I love that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
Nothing wrong with post-its and writing, by the way. I'm a fan too. Yeah. Anybody else? Thoughts, questions?
Hey, Rodney, I'm
Yes.
Taryn.
Hi, Tom.
Hi. I'm sorry I came in late and didn't catch the whole presentation, but of course my brain immediately percolated because I'm a filmmaker that this is a short film. But then I thought even expanding past this, I'm like, what a beautiful installation. I lack my words. This audio video installation that you have, these groups of people that are able to sort of experience this together and hear it in different modalities, and how do you play with those voices and those visuals, whether it's an actual generated image or just the text on the screen and the code on the screen. I just posted an article about Karen Chien, who's done this like beautiful installation for The Man in Black, which is a Chinese documentary. It's just a new way of like distribution. So, and also kudos to you. And that last time you were on here, you introduced me to the Japanese dance Buto, or I'd
Yeah.
seen it on your website, and I actually incorporated an element of it in a new script that I'm writing because there's a huge Japanese element to it. It's a big passion of mine, and one of the characters has gone through this radical re-aging process, and he's using Buto to basically comment on his transformation, sort of the death and the birth of his new body. So it was very, very timely. So thank you.
Yeah, please connect with me offline.
Okay.
In addition to the Substack, I just released the Somatic Futures LinkedIn newsletter.
Oh, yay.
So I'll be sharing there as well.
Good. I just launched my newsletter 3 weeks ago too. So
Yeah,
let's share.
let's definitely connect offline. The installation, if I just want to hop on that for a second, I love the idea because one of the things in terms of somatic movements, I've had experience with Feldenkrais method, Alexander technique, Butoh, and so forth. The prompting for movements are all very different. So Feldenkrais method, the prompt may be, I invite you to move your shoulder to the left and notice what happens to your ribs, to your neck, and so forth. Alexander, I invite you to stand up and feel the buoyancy above your head. Try and maintain the buoyancy. So it feels a little abstract or whatever. A Butoh prompt could be something like, move as if your skin was being eaten by ants. Like there's something so like that, but it's not prescriptive. And the idea is not to mimic what you hear, it's to feel the experience of you hearing it, use that feeling to make you move spontaneously. That's a whole different ball game there. So this idea of an installation and maybe different prompts for folks to experience this kind of like fragmented cyborgy thing. Yeah, we should talk.
That's cool. Sounds good.
Yeah. Yes, Brendan.
I love this exploration of the sort of obsolescence and the sort of the nobody told me about this and things like that. I also really like the sort of the intermingling, the effective kind of mixed media of the code and prose, and it makes me think about sort of other data traces, however mundane, that you might be able to kind of construct as like as that sort of digital anthropology of these activities. You know, like uh, it's a long time ago. Not a lot of people, I guess, saw it, but there was a really wonderful Google project for the Indian myth of Ramayana, where they kind of included calendar and maps and all kinds of. It was in the days when pop-ups were allowed. And so, but it popped up all of these different kind of independent windows, these artifacts that we sort of intrinsically understand as sense-making kind of units of what things are and what they mean. So, you know, like looking at spikes in people's in a bot's battery usage, or in the network traffic, or in other sort of aspects of that, because you know we have these reads, these vitals for human beings, and you could create an anthropology of the vitals of somebody going through kind of a nervous breakdown or whatever. But like the fact that there are all of these other dimensions and all of these other sort of traces to be able to collect. I mean, actually working on these operating systems, you get a dizzying array of these
Yeah.
these things about what did, like, I'm on Vision Pro, is like, what did the Vision Pro think my hands looked like at this point? And so that there so it's sort of actually personally motivated by the fact that we do actually need to have sort of archives and artifacts of these traces that become increasingly kind of um, messy. Like, you know, got to
Yeah.
watch, you need to look at the motion and the heart rate and the blood pulse oximetry and things like that. Yeah, I just think that there's as well as the sort of a prose narrative, the speech, the voice, I think that that would be really generative. I also think that there are all of these other sort of dimensions that you could both use because we are familiar, or also imply that we will have familiarity with in the future
Yes.
as a consequence of these ubiquities. And I think that's so much fun to dabble in and kind of splash around in. So I'd love to see it.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to collaborate with you and others, man. And I love what you're saying about the archiving, because one of the things that I've been trying to kind of convey through Somatic Futures kind of as a lens is this idea of like, especially in speculative context, like body as memory, body as mirror, body as art, oracle or archive and so forth. So you think about our own body stories, whether generationally or relationally and so forth, societal impacts. How can you juxtapose that with the data archiving? In that kind of loose, prosy, kind of cody type way, what's evoked there. And that's why when I saw Sandro, when he first started talking, and I was like, oh, there's some synergy here creatively. I don't know what it looks like yet, but there's something like to communicate with these beings, like
My
live
body movements are
time?
embarrassing. I'm not graceful in any way, so I can say that.
Yeah. Sure. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? I guess I'll hand the mic back to you, Julian. Really appreciate you letting me share. You know, love all the feedback. You know.
Yeah, of course. Um, how's this format working for folks? Working? Okay.
Yeah, I love it.
So then you know, sign up. I missed a couple of people signed up. I wasn't paying attention to the feeds yesterday. So there were some other folks who signed up. We'll get them in for next week. One that I'm super curious about. It was what was it? What'd she call it? And it doesn't have to be formal. You know, it could just be thoughts or ideas. It's particularly nice if it's something that you're working on that has that where you're just feeling that kind of interest or desire to get it out and get it in front of folks in some informal way. But yeah, AI Tupperware parties. Like, what's that about? That sounds like it's gonna be a good one.
The one thing, Julian, one of the things I love about these get-togethers is some of the organic ideas and thoughts that come up. And I'm wondering if there's a way to, outside of the chat function, a way to kind of capture and like kind of retrieve some of the ideas that came up. Because as I'm talking, I'm not necessarily able to read everything that's kind of coming up. So just a thought, just kind of throwing it out there, you know. It'd be cool to go back and say, oh, what about that last talk Julian had like 2 months ago? I know somebody had a cool idea back then. How can I go check out what that idea was and maybe dig it up and play with it a bit? You know?
Yeah. I mean, you know, the naive way is which I just haven't gotten into the ritual of it, is just because these are recorded, I just don't do anything with them. But I think the overall motivation for recording them was sort of, you know, like kind of, I guess, kind of in line with that to a certain degree. There's always this big vision of like, if it's all there, then it should be indexable and that kind of thing. You know, I'm not 100% sure if that, I get what you're saying. And also in general, I'm kind of like, I'm not sure, is it worth the effort? So you build some kind of infrastructure to do that, while also kind of, you know, depending on how you feel about it, like feeding YouTube with more stuff that it's going to extract and do things with. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly where I am
Okay.
on that. But my sense is like that. I get it. It would totally be awesome. I just don't know either. I kind of have an idea of how to do it. I guess I don't have the time to do it, and also, um, sometimes like the dinner party just kind of, it's meant to marinate, and the ideas and conversations are meant to percolate in a different way, as opposed to like, oh, let me go into the stacks and pull that one note out. Like it's almost like, you know, going to like a really good lecture and not bothering to take notes.
Yeah, sure. I wonder if AI could like extract, you know, ideas from the chats and kind of summarize them or
I
something.
mean that's the idea, and
Yeah.
also, you know, do I get it wanting that? I'm not
Yeah.
in conflict with it, and that
Sure.
was the vision, to be able to do that. And I've tried it a couple times, you know, just kind of like locally, and it's like, okay, this could be kind of cool. And I think
Sure.
Sandra and I at one point had talked about it quite extensively, about building something like that.
Sure.
Dre, early days, years ago, had the Bibliobot that was running. There's this isn't related to these conversations directly, but there's the there's the red pink candy gem in the Discord, and if you click it, it goes into a digester, and the digester digests and metabolizes things and links, and then sometimes those go out in the newsletter. There's a lot of possibilities, and it's all interesting and cool, you know, at least at a minimum as an experiment for sure. And then it's also like it hits the less yammering, more hammering wall, where it's like, yeah, great, okay, build it. I mean, it's all there.
Sure.
I'm not saying that in an accusatory way, but it's like, yes, okay. Whose responsibility is that? Who wants to take that on?
Sure.
Who wants to spend the time doing it? I'm not opposed to doing it. It's just I don't have time.
Yeah.
or it's, you know, I spent time on it, and then, you know, like the little red gem, like that was a whole that was done before I could have an AI help me code it, and it's just kind of figuring out how do you do that on Discord, integrate it. Now it's like, and so once a day, I get a little notification that the that Edgar bot just consume some more stuff from the digest. Okay, cool, that works. And then, you know, what do you do with that afterwards? If I had a little, probably just like a squad of people, we could be like, hey, let's work on this, and someone would go off and work on it, you know, for probably like a day's work, maybe less, to do that next thing that you're describing, get it to the next stage, and then do the thing that, you know, I think a collective like this would do, would be like, hey, what did we learn from that? Write it up, like share with people with what we're doing and how we're using AI in these other orthogonal to the dominant mode kind of ways, experimental, new forms of interaction, new ways of collaborating with these autonomous alien life forms and all that kind of stuff. And it could be super powerful and super cool. So we're doing it. Just it doesn't happen as instantaneously as it be.
Hey, Julian. It's kind of quiet. Can I,
Beautiful, isn't it? The silence. We're in our John Cage moment here.
yeah, can I take a moment and throw a provocation in the chat and just kind of see what happens?
Sure.
So I'm not gonna give like a lot of context on it. I just kind of started this maybe like 3 weeks ago before the LA riots and all that stuff really kicked off. And now I'm like, holy shit, what am I doing?
They're not riots, just to be clear. They are not riots.
Well, I'm in Canada, right? And I'm seeing other things,
I'm
perhaps.
clarifying. I'm clarifying for you. Seriously, they are not riots.
Right on.
They're civil First Amendment protected protests. So maybe you know, let your Canadian friends know from a guy who's in LA, actually here. They're
Yeah.
not riots. That's a media distortion.
All right. Fun thing. So this was just kind of like a test. I want to start making, I want to use t-shirts as a diegetic prototype and make t-shirts from the future. So like you could have perhaps like a Monsanto sponsored warp tour and like a bunch of bands and have people talk about why you're wearing a t-shirt from 2045 or something like that. So I tried to test this in Shopify, and Shopify took down my store. So I just kind of relaunched it through the printer. And it's kind of silly. But it's a thing that you can actually buy, right? Like you could go in and order your whatever protest hat, right? It's like a, maybe not a protest hat, but let's check it out.
Where is this? Am I supposed to see something here? Or I'm somewhere else?
There's a link in the chat.
A link in the chat.
Link in the chat. So yeah, like it is sort of scanning, right? Signals that I'm seeing from the media, what is happening, and responding to it with design. And it's almost like buying t-shirts from the event. Hey, the world is changing, get your t-shirt kind of thing.
So can I throw an idea at you?
Yeah.
So I love the idea of just kind of wearing signals kind of as it happened. What if the counter signals were actually on the back of the t-shirt, where it wasn't necessarily one signal per t-shirt, but maybe there's a one main one, there's some counter signals. So depending on person witnessing it, their view, it literally requires them to kind of orient around you or you to kind of turn. And there's something about that gesture. Kind
That's
of
an interesting
people's perspectives or something.
Or like the part of the photograph that the media outlet cropped out. Right, you have like the one really famous shot and then the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's dope.
Thanks.
Yeah. No.
What if there was like something as big as the side of a building that showed like a picture of a bunch of people wearing t-shirts, and it just was a permanent installation, and then it modified kind of daily. So you could read the news of the day by deciphering the t-shirts that are generated daily on this wall. I'd like that. I'd go and watch the wall every day.
It's kind of like when you start getting your news from memes and you're like, what the hell is this? And you're like, oh, this happened. But now it's like a t-shirt and you're like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, t-shirts are hard because like you really have to be clever. Like just putting like some on the nose kind of statement about what's going on is just not what you got to do. You got to come up with something like, be happy. That has to mean something to you, right? So it's tough. It's tough.
It's kind of I feel like the especially as a billboard, it reminds me of the doomsday clock, being this kind of diffuse aggregate of all of the different things that people are excited or scared about in the world. But instead of the doomsday clock, it's the doomsday American Apparel ad, where just the sort of the scale of how well fed and happy people look is a general reflection. It's kind of like a political or socio-political version of the continuous partial attention uh, uh, picture frame that Berg were talking about in the early 20 teens, where you just get these kind of diffuse barometers that you can kind of see by virtue of what people are wearing and stuff.
Pretty cool.
Also what came up for me is like, it would be cool if I walked by and I saw a t-shirt fitted over like a garbage can or like a mailbox where it's like, it looks like it's designed for humans, but they're really not. It's for actual objects, kind of in the space where the event is actually happening. So there's something about anthropomorph anthrop I can't say the word, but when we kind of project our humanness onto objects and all that shit. So something about seeing all these ill-fitted t-shirts on actual objects. That'd be interesting.
That got me thinking. I have two reflections. One is like on Instagram, when people are posting designs or dribble or something else like graphic design art, and there are these bots that just automatically pull the graphics, generate the stuff on the Red Dot, generate the Shopify front and market the shit out of it on Instagram, and people are poisoning that, right, by encouraging others to like this and tag just some nonsense for a t-shirt, and then you, like, a bot hypothetically has to spend energy and time generating these Red Dot and Shopify stores with your nonsense designs, right? So as a countermeasure towards people pulling other people's work and selling it. The other thing I was thinking was, a couple of years ago, I had this idea of doing subscription model imaginary death metal band t-shirt subscriptions, right? So probably everyone has seen these interviews with people to festivals where people go ask them about fictional bands. So what do you think about that? They're really cool. And people want to be in the loop and be in the know. So yeah, I saw the set, it was really nice. But band doesn't exist, gig didn't exist. So I was thinking, okay, how can we do it so, just these obscure black and white, illegible death metal logos, and like once every quarter you get a t-shirt with a new band, and you can go around saying, yeah, you haven't heard about it? No, too bad, man. It's a small club.
That's a really good idea, by the way. That just think about it like this. So many people wear so there's that trope of like, have you heard of the pretend, the wild vapor strawberries? And they're like, yeah, of course I'm here for them, right? But then there's the flip side where it's like, young woman wearing an Iron Maiden shirt, and then somebody's like, name 3 songs, right? And I love it when they snap back with 3 or 6 song titles. But shirts are cool, man. Like a cool band shirt. So just invent bands for the sole reason of making cool shirts. Come up with cool names. Come up with cool designs. And that's it. They're it's not even that it's like a design fiction. It's an alternate universe t-shirt company.
Vibe up some web pages, marketing or whatever. Yeah.
Vibe
And
it.
performances. Yeah.
You know
Vibe
what?
the vibe.
Like
Well-
gorillas. Is that like gorillas?
In a way, or Hatsune Miku, or one of those VTuber style things. The Sandro, that another thing that got me thinking is that with this like real time kind of vibe or real time coding thing, you could take any expression that's even uttered in a business meeting that everybody laughs at, and by the end of the meeting, there's like a Shopify of that expression that was muttered in the meeting. Like you can buy the shirt. Remember when Dre said
Absolutely.
misimprovement? That's funny. And now everyone's wearing a misimprovement shirt at work. Pay $35 for it.
Have you seen?
Yeah, so someone's gonna say, no, I wore that yesterday, like old news.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you seen that little clip of the guy saying, "Oh, I tasted a little tear gas. It tasted like fascism." So it's playing around with that, and I was talking to a friend who's also a futurist, and he was like, "Well, what if you left like a gap, so it could be like, oh, I tasted a little bit of AI. It tasted like fascism. Oh, I tasted a little bit of this, right?"
I love that, Dre. It's almost like you would have meetings in a sense just to have the meeting, just to talk, and then everyone gets, like, you're not allowed to see what it's generating, and then after the meeting you just see what it thought,
Well, that's
came
the
out of the
value.
meeting.
That's the
Yeah.
value of in-person human conversation is memes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
That's just so depressing. It's like sound. Why are we talking about this? Well, because of the sound bites.
Like a
That's,
meme might come out of it. Are you recording this? Yeah, we're still recording this, right?
Right.
Because there's some memes coming out of this. By the way, go to memelord.shopify.com. Smash that like button. Subscribe.
Yeah. If you want yesterday's memes, yeah. If you want tomorrow's memes, go to my store. It was like 30 years ago, Sweden launched a new jet fighter, JAS, JAS, and they did a show there was at the time a festival in Stockholm called the Stockholm Water Festival, right? Celebrating because there's a lot of water in the city, and the plane crashed. The day after the crash, a guy made a mint by screen printing out, "I saw the fireworks at the Stockholm Water Festival with the silhouette of the airplane," right? And this was 30 years ago. So I mean, this is analog technology, but his stuff became a success. So, but since then we can do like print on demand stuff so fast.
in the
that
moment.
in the moment it's really lost its the allure unless you do something that is actually limited. That either you do something that is really limited, you can only buy it at this venue, this concert from this person, whatever, or you do something which relies on being viral already, so people know it. It's a famous brand, or it's something that is seen on TikTok or Insta, whatever. It's difficult to break in just with the store, right? Because the store ends up in between those two things. It's print on demand, but it doesn't have the virality, and it doesn't have the like the locus or the origin story.
I propose we create viral sniffing robot dogs, and they just go around and they just sniff for virality, and then transmit it back to home base to Shopify.
It kind of reminds me of the phenomenon of hyperinflation. What my family were watching the most recent, I guess, Steve Coogan movie where he befriends a penguin in fascist Argentina. Um, and you know, he is a school teacher and he gets his wages over the weekend, and the people are like, "You have to spend this all right now." And he's like, "Well, you know, maybe I just, you know, buy some stuff next week." And they're like, "You don't understand. You This will be worthless next week. You have to spend it right now, or you won't be able to get your money's worth because we're gonna have to pay you double next week." And yeah, just the idea of that sort of constant debasement of the foundation of culture is fun and exciting, but it's also a lot like that sort of catastrophic hyperinflation as well.
So I guess one thing we could do is try to come up with what is the new medium of of virality that has we can build a new culture cachet, right? Because there are only so many t-shirts you can own and wear in a day. But okay, maybe there's a bracelet, maybe there's a
It's a
pink
hat.
cigar, maybe there's something else, right? I mean, hats are done, obviously, but
Hats are
what's
cooked.
the next thing?
There's a really cool reference in Westworld season 2. I believe it was episode 1 or episode 2, where one of the characters, I think he's a famous football player. I didn't recognize him, but somebody said, "Oh, he's a football player." Had words almost like crossword orientation, a vertical and then horizontal and whatever. They're all just different emotions. And imagine like one word lighting up while the other one stayed dim. And whatever emotion he had in the show, that was the word that was lit up on his.
I think that was
On,
episode 1 or 2
yeah, it's
with
one or two of
and
season,
the
season 2.
what was it was a foot it was he was a footballer who he
Yeah,
didn't
he's a
say a
footballer.
word
Yeah.
in the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's and then he comes back later where he's like really really angry, and you could see like anger is written on his shirt as he's attacking somebody. Or I think no, it wasn't anger; it was something like aroused. I think the word aroused was on his shirt as he was beating somebody up, and that idea of real time response. I wanted to make the shirt because my brain just went to like I think I know how to make some of this shirt with flat panel, electroluminescent panel, and a galvanic sensor. You could probably and a heart rate monitor. You could probably like infer some emotion.
Sweat.
But at any rate, I like this idea, and you take it to the meme level.
But to go back to the what you originally presented, and then your comment about like leaving some blank space for like, I feel like that is maybe rises to the occasion a little more, because what you I feel like is risked when you kind of bring in this commercialization to something that's very meaningful is that you risk trivializing it. And that's because it's playing with ideas of disposability, and that's the tension with like coming up with a t-shirt that's on the moment is like, oh, something that used to be a little more scarce, now suddenly like you can make a disposable meme. And that's cool, but like if you're making a comment on that, then it feels like the comment that you're making doesn't necessarily show your commercial enterprise in the best light. Um, you know, so thinking about, treating the subject with some gravity and, or maybe not gravity in importance, some things are too important to treat seriously, but, at least treat interestingly. And, it's something more than just like, let me commercialize what's going on.
So it's really not about that. Like I said, I just kind of like kicked it off. I'm Mexican, right? I'm an immigrant.
Yeah.
I've been dealing with immigration for like my entire life, and it just felt like something that resonated with me at this moment. It's kind of like a prayer that says, "Hey, fucking keep me safe from the police," right? From
Yeah, totally. And that comes through. I'm just saying, like, so the reason I said like it risks trivializing it is because
Yeah.
that is a risk. It's not necessarily the whole story.
Yeah, I felt that way too. And to be honest, this is the first time I just do this. Like I'm tend to be like really like if I'm making t-shirts, they have to be like screen printed by hand by like right like and this was like this is stupid. Let's use the most stupid channel to like promote it, right? But I can see what you're saying where it doesn't look good. Now we're like making money off of this, right?
The first read could be, adversarially taken, I guess. The first read being like, oh, this is another drop shipper who's taking advantage, and they're not going to know your story, even if you have an about page, even if
Right.
you have it at the top,
Even if I make a
which is
video about it, right?
yeah. I mean, there's one thing that I learned in grad school is that you cannot control how people interpret your work, and they might do it not knowing that they're misinterpreting it, or they could be deliberate because they want to be adversarial and antagonizing in order to I guess nowadays, back when I was in grad school, there was no such thing as clickbait. It was just called junk mail. But nowadays it could just turn into a whole thing. There was one episode where a bunch of sincere, well-intentioned academics did a journal or a journal devoted a journal issue to kind of technology and culture topics, and it was in the throes of like postmodern thinking and writing and that kind of stuff, and a bunch of adversarials submitted some papers which were accepted, which they then said like, this is all bullshit, we just made this stuff up, and we rambled with the jargon that we saw was in the amongst this group. But they did it because it was a political move, really, to say the academy is just filled with nonsense. These people are trying to comment on the relationship between technology and culture, and it's just a bunch of babble, which maybe there's a little bit of that for sure. I would concede that point. It's like being deliberately, you're obfuscating the point for the purposes of having your own, I don't know, this whole thing. But that was a huge flame out for the desire, the sincere, earnest desire of these academics to have constructive dialogue on the topic. Because how do you respond to that? You can't be like, no, you guys are being assholes. It's like, no, it's so difficult. It's so difficult, especially when they're like, I don't care, call me an asshole, whatever. I called you an asshole first because look at your stupid writing style.
Yeah, I think I actually used it was like the Pomo essay generator or something that came after that, and I think I actually used it in my BA essay, and it passed.
Yeah.
I was also it's like a like shit posting is today, right? So you're just provoking, but you're trying to make a point somewhere. But I'm thinking back to like how not to how to try to be interpreted in a way that maybe you would like. That would be like even stripping down the message even further, right? So if you just did a t-shirt, if we're still doing t-shirts, right? So you do a t-shirt where it says all the money from the print is all the money uh, all the money from this t-shirt is donated to organization of choice, right? So that's like your it doesn't have to be, you can steal the money, but I mean it's going to be a clear message, right? And of course if 20 people buy it and it goes like all this money goes to funding anti-ICE stuff or concealing people or whatever, that could be a clearer thing. I think in in how the media landscape is and how many layers it's filtered through, hoping to create a discussion based on forcing people to think and interpret, like a future scenario t-shirt. This happened in 2055. I mean, it's a nice project. It's an interesting project. I think it's going to get lost in the noise. People don't get it because right now the only thing we see are people waving American or Mexican flags or ICE flags or whatever, and Trump hats. And or from where I'm sitting in Sweden, the other side of the world. But that's all I'm seeing. So your t-shirt wouldn't translate to me because no one would take the time to actually think about it. But it's a difficult thing, and it's
Sorry, I was just gonna say I have to bounce. I realized I got a call in 2 minutes. But thanks everyone, super awesome.
Appreciate it.
And remember, think if you got something to share, just go to the sign up link.
have a lovely weekend, y'all.
Thanks,
Yes.
everyone.
Yeah, everyone enjoy the weekend.
Yeah.
Take
Love
care,
you.
guys.
Lovely weekend. Okay. Love you.
Bye.